A government-run sting of Obamacare showing how taxpayers are getting stung.
We used fictitious identities, false information, and forged documents, as well as instructions from the marketplace itself. We continue to receive subsidized coverage for all 11 successful applications, including those where we did not provide any of the requested supporting documents.
So 11 out of 12 fraudulent policies getting through and still getting government subsidies totaling $2,500 a month. Some here say this is more proof Obamacare is rife with fraud that's ripping taxpayers off. Are they right? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Elizabeth McDonald, Bill Baldwin, John Tamny, along with Rick Unger, Sabrina Schaefer. Now, EMAC, you have been warning about this for a long time.
Yeah, this is literally rolling out the welcome mat for scamsters. I love how that GAO guy, David, was testifying to an empty room because the Democrats and people who support Obamacare treat this like a flaming cactus. This is basically the GAO saying this. We have attorneys generals across the country from New Hampshire to California fearing that the Obamacare is one big house of fraud. So, you know, I don't know where we go with this, because with tax credits for Obamacare, that's literally money out the door. The federal gravy train is really leaving the station right now, David.
Rick, 11 out of 12 applicants were fraudulent.
Well, you know, it's segments like this that can make it a little bit uncomfortable to sit in my chair. Look, I'm not going to defend that. That's awful. But I am going to point a few things out. It is a new program, and this is not some secret organization that was testing this to see if this was going on. It was the GAO. It was a part of the administration.
No, it was a part of the government to check out, and they found something. Yeah, you're right.
At least they're taking the trouble to find out where the problems are.
Well, they're required by law to do that. But John Tamny, the point is that the only way the Affordable Care Act can be affordable is if the applicants commit fraud. That's the only way they get the subsidies.
Yeah, well, you know, the founding fathers kind of wrote the Constitution with this sort of fraud in mind. They wanted governance to be local precisely because, as taxpayers, we could oversee those doling out our taxpayer dollars much better if we were around them on a daily basis. When you're trying to run a national program, this kind of fraud and abuse is inevitable. You know, the reality is that Obamacare fails precisely because it turns the founders' vision on its head and makes governance national.
I think, Bill, that John makes a great point. The fact is our Constitution limits and divides the power of government. That is its purpose, to limit and divide the power of government. This administration, Obamacare in particular, grows government and concentrates its power in the federal side.
Now, you're not going to get any argument from me about whether the federal government is getting too big, but I don't get worried the way Elizabeth does about this particular kind of fraud.
Why not?
Listen, if I cheat by counterfeiting a $20 bill, if I have a fake Social Security application, if I have a fake tax refund, I steal money. What happens if I fake insurance? I get to go to the doctor. I just don't see criminals lining up to get an extra annual physical.
Hold on a second. But that would be fine if nobody pays for it, Sabrina. But we pay for it. We pay for the fraud. And we should mention, by the way, there are 8 million enrollees in Obamacare. 8 million is the most recent number we have. 85% of those enrollees are receiving subsidies, and as we just saw, 11 out of the 12 applicants were fraudulent applications.
Right. I mean, first of all, I feel like we're living in an episode of Groundhog Day, right? We've been having the same conversation for well over a year now. I remember last Thanksgiving, we talked about how officials were warning, saying there are serious breaches of security. Then we talked about how a lot of the state exchanges, like in Vermont, where they know that lots of personal identification was being stolen. Now, the government itself is saying, hey, we have a major problem. The question is, will anything be done about it? And I think we absolutely have to make sure it is. I disagree with Bill. And it's not simply the portal to get into Obamacare. Let's not forget that once Obamacare is in full effect, we are going to have a national database of electronic records. That is sort of a one-stop shop for identity theft. That is what I am truly terrified about.
Yes, a database with our personal information. As we know from the IRS scandals, there are all sorts of people that can dig into that information. But EMAC, let's focus on the name, the Affordable Care Act, for a moment. The subsidies are what makes the Affordable Care Act affordable.
Yeah,
if those subsidies are either fraudulent or being made up through IRS rule changes and so forth, this is not an affordable thing. Doesn't the mandate then that everybody has to buy insurance go away?
Yeah, you're right. In other words, it's propped up with taxpayer dollars, so it's really not, quote, affordable. I know there's different levels of insurance in the exchanges that make it, some are affordable than not. But you know what really strikes me, too, about this, David, is where is the HHS Inspector General on this? Where is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that Elizabeth Warren, banged on about? Where are these individuals to stop fraud? When Medicare was launched, David, when Medicare was launched, within years you had fraud within Medicare. So when you have these gigantic entitlement systems, it's like the Full Employment Act for bureaucrats to go chasing the scamsters.
Well, Rick, hold on a second, Rick, you are absolutely right. It was the GAO, a government organization, that discovered this fraud, and our hats off to them. But we have all these organizations that have been created during this administration to check fraud in the private sector, but not enough to check fraud in the public sector.
Well, I actually don't think that's true. You've seen a major increase of
What about the IRS?
Well, wait. We've seen a major increase of cracking down on fraud in Medicare. And I'm trying to find a way to work flaming cactuses into this. I just love that expression. Sorry, I needed more time to work it out. So, no, they are cracking down on fraud. Also, can I remind you that it's not just called the Affordable Care Act, it's called the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act.
How about the Taxpayer Protection Act?
Well, it's not about that. It's about patient protection.
Clearly, it's not about that. Finish your point, Rick. Finish your point.
Patients are taxpayers. And by the way, Affordable Care Act didn't mean affordable health insurance policies. It meant bending the curve of the cost of health care in this country to make it more affordable.
Okay. Let's get to one of the points, because Rick threw a lot out there, John. The fact is do you think that this government is doing enough to uncover fraud in things like Obamacare? I don't.
Of course it's not, because it has no incentive to do so. And getting to Rick's point about Affordable Care Act and patient protection, if that's our idea, if we want to get health care to people and protect the patient, why would we give it to the two left-footed federal government to distribute this as opposed to giving it to the capitalistic private sector that is expert at getting things to people affordably?
But, Bill, isn't that the point? And that's really the point of this whole segment. We knew this was going to be happening. EMAC and all of us have been suggesting this was going to happen for a long time, because we know how inefficient the government is.
There's a lot of fraud going on. Let me mention two things that the government should be more concerned about than faulty applications. Number one, Medicare mills, where doctors bill the government $2 million a year for procedures that are either unnecessary or not even performed. And number two, getting back to that whole database of identity fraud, that is going to be a problem. It's already a problem at the IRS.
Well,
we're losing billions that way.
But Sabrina, when you look at the way this president has managed his organization, the executive branch, for the past 3 or 4 years in particular, do you have any confidence that they could manage the rollout of Obamacare?
No, absolutely not. And I think the thing that's most concerning is it's almost as if they're sort of snubbing their nose at the American people about this. Look, last August, we had more than a dozen states' attorneys generals write a letter to Secretary Sebelius saying, this is a major problem. We need you to take it seriously. I haven't heard anything. It's crickets. This is a major problem. The portal is one thing, but as Bill reinforces, the fact that all of our information is going to be out there in this national database is what's really frightening, because it's not simply your financial risk that's at stake. It's your health. It's your life.
And John, your idea, I think, is brilliant. Going back to the Founding Fathers, the idea of a divided government is a good thing. It creates competition between the powers of government, but we are concentrating so much power in the executive, and we see the problems with Obamacare, with the IRS, and all the rest of it.
Again, it's turning the founders' visions on its head. What we were supposed to do with the states we lived in was to find our own bliss. If you want a lot of health care, you might choose New York. If you want very little, you might choose Texas. This is concentrating power in the national government. Of course, there's going to be waste and fraud, but even worse, it's going to retard the process whereby we get access to health care.
A limited and divided government is the best, and we're not going in that direction, folks.